Hey everybody, Matthew Coller here along with Sam Ekstrom for Purple Insider Extra, and we wish we had good news to bring you here for another day of Vikings training camp, but we don't, because Justin Jefferson went down and has an AC joint sprain, according to Adam Schefter, who was on it just minutes later after Justin Jefferson went down and was taken off the field slowly earlier today. Sam, it doesn't sound like the injury is super serious for Justin Jefferson, but a scary moment here in a training camp that has already had a lot of things go sideways for the Vikings.
Yeah, and I hate to be a further pessimist, but it's also hard for me to believe that they know the full timeline at this point. I mean, it basically happened an hour ago. They're going to have to do more testing on that. They're going to have to see how it responds after like a day of rest. And, if you do some amateur Googling, this could be a multi-week injury, 6-week injury. Who knows really what the timeline's going to be. Season starts 37 days from now, so he's got 5 weeks to heal. Justin Jefferson's not a player that I think needs a whole lot more practice. I think you just want him to be ready for week 1. So I'm saying right now he's probably shut down for like the rest of training camp and probably a couple weeks beyond that.
So when he went down, we didn't initially see it watching, and then Andy Mack ended up getting a really good video of it that I retweeted if you want to go check it out. But my thought was, of all the players on the team, that would be the most upsetting for the fans and the most destructive to this team's chances to get hurt, it's Justin Jefferson. And this is why you and I had all these conversations in the offseason about wide receiver 3 and what if someone goes down even for a number of weeks. And here we are with Justin Jefferson with an injury that's not going to end his career or anything, but it sets him way back in this offense and has the potential to impact week 1 with how long, like you said, the general diagnosis for an AC joint sprain would be. And so it looks like he'll probably miss the majority of the rest of training camp in the preseason and have to just jump right back into it. That's going to make things, I think, very difficult. And this is why we talked about having more players with the potential to step in. So when he was out, since D.D. Westbrook has also not practiced with the offense, it was Amir Smith-Marset and KJ Osborne working in a wide receiver group that has KJ Osborne and Amir Smith-Marset and Adam Thielen just does not seem all that dangerous in comparison. So again, it's not the most serious injury of all time, but if it takes some ramp-up time for Jefferson to get back to 100% once the season starts, that could have a very serious impact on the first 2 weeks, which you and I would project, hey, you really need those wins in those first couple of weeks. So this is something to keep a really close eye on as we go forward.
Yeah, and not to add to the panic, but Adam Thielen actually got shaken up too at one point, and he sat out for a lot of reps toward the end of practice. I don't think it's anything serious. He stayed on the field, didn't seem to be seeking any medical attention, but we saw some units that had Osborne, Smith-Marset, and Beebe as your 3 wide receivers. That's a little bit scary. And you mentioned Westbrook. We're kind of wondering what happened here, because Mike Zimmer raved about his workout, which was one of the reasons they signed him. But then it seems like his diagnosis is not really positive either. Mike Zimmer said he's a little ways away, and when he says the word little, I got the sense that was sort of a proverbial, he's like a ways away. I don't know about the little part, and he hasn't really done anything besides catch some punts. So that was your insurance policy, but he's not practicing. So the young guys now have to step up, and I've been, of course, raving about KJ Osborne, but I didn't expect him to be a wide receiver 2, which is what he was today.
So we'll see what the diagnosis is ultimately and when Justin Jefferson is able to get back on the field. But as for right now, it's not the most devastating news you could have, but it's certainly tough for a team that's already taken a lot of shots here early in the season, and that included Kirk Cousins' press conference and Jeff Gladney being indicted and cut, and also Christian Darrisaw being injured. We asked Mike Zimmer today about Christian Darrisaw and bringing him back, and he said it's been 1 step forward and 2 steps back. We still have not seen Christian Darrisaw take any 11-on-11 reps. He's 3 days into being back on the field in some capacity, but it looks like this is also going to be a slow process for Christian Darrisaw to come back, which makes projecting him anywhere near the first week starter very difficult.
Yeah, when you think about injuries that just don't go away, you think about hamstring, groin, calf, foot, this is one of those. You look at the last year for Darrisaw, groin injury in 2020, surgery to fix it after the season, Then he goes into rookie minicamp OTAs. It looks like he's fine. Misses some time with what Mike Zimmer called a groin pull. And then suddenly he's back in there, but he's limited. And it looked like, okay, he's making progress. 6 weeks later, he's at camp. He's not practicing. And the dichotomy is that there's Darrisaw on the podium yesterday talking to us and saying, I feel great. This isn't going to be a problem anymore. And then less than 24 hours later, Mike Zimmer's up there saying that it's nagging and he's 2 steps back. And we don't know if that is referring to just this whole saga kind of as a whole, like going back to the spring, or if this was something that recently happened because there was no change in his status from yesterday. So that's a concern. Mike Zimmer was talking about the complexity of trying to be a rookie offensive lineman, and for Darrisaw to not get any work in so far, that's frustrating to Mike Zimmer, and that's probably why Rashad Hill might be your week 1 starter.
We're thinking about our conversation the other day of just how much these things are impacting the Vikings. These last 2 practices, the offensive side has not done anything at all. I mean, you could say the defense is ahead of the offense, but Kirk Cousins, I won't call him rusty. He's been a professional for a long time, but frustrated on 2 separate plays. One, he tore his helmet off and sort of looked around at somebody to bark at, and another time he sort of smacked his hands together after a difficult play. So we're hitting some of those dog days that you talk about of trying to get through camp, even to the first preseason game, even to the joint workouts with the Denver Broncos that are coming up next week. And the Vikings just keep taking these hits along the way. And, I think that when we talk about Darrisaw and this offensive line, we're looking at right now, I think, a line that has a journeyman sort of backup, or a guy who has been a career backup in Rashad Hill starting. We're looking at maybe potentially Oli Udoh starting, who's never played guard before. Mike Zimmer really talked about him as if he is the starter right now, and that does not give a whole lot of confidence. And I noticed today, Sam, there were a lot of sacks. There were a lot of quarterbacks running around and moving around, and that's just something that, when we look back and look at this offseason where they spent so much on the defensive side, I think we'll say these few couple of positions that you decided not to address might be coming back to bite you already in camp.
Yeah, and the defensive line that they're facing in practice is probably a little more requisite of an NFL defensive line. Last year, that line faced Jaleel Johnson and Shamar Stephen a lot in practice, and, DJ Wanham and Afadio Denebo. This year, they don't even have Pierce back yet, but it's Richardson and Tomlinson and Daniil Hunter. So the defense has certainly, kind of had the early edge in camp, and we've said that before, but not when the defense was as kind of fresh and new as it is this year. Cousins, has been out for 5 days before yesterday, but you wouldn't expect him to look as rusty as he has the last 2 days. And I'd honestly say before his quarantine, he was a little bit rusty looking too. So some concern on the offense, but I think it all comes back to Justin Jefferson. When is he going to come back? Because he is so vital to what they want to do this year.
Right. Nothing now becomes as important as Justin Jefferson's status, because without him, we saw how the offense operated over the first 2 weeks of last season, and then how it operated when Justin Jefferson came back. So that's it for us. The Vikings are going to have a scrimmagey practice tomorrow, in which we will, of course, be back and do another video, this time from US Bank Stadium, and we'll keep you up to date on everything involving Justin Jefferson. But another day, another big news story for the Vikings.